Hi, guys. Welcome to Real Food Recovery. We have a good episode today, and we're glad you're here with us. But first, I want to say hi to Jamie. How's it going today?
Good, good. Glad to be here always.
Good. So today we're going to talk about a topic that is very common among those trying to recover from the effects of ultra-processed foods, and that is the conundrums they are up against while at work. Unfortunately, this is such a big issue because the workplace is typically filled with landmines. The workplace is often a hub of food exposure, whether it's donuts in the break room, catered lunches, vending machines, or birthday celebrations every week. It can feel like food is everywhere and not just any food. It's usually the ultra processed kind that we're working hard to recover from. So today we're going to explore why these environments can feel so overwhelming and what we can do to set ourselves up for success. So the question becomes, what do I need to do to stay clean and sober while at work? And by the end of this podcast, we are hoping to help bring greater clarity to that question. And the biggest disappointment is that having processed food at work is sadly the norm now. Jamie,
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but you were out there in the working world for a while. What do you have to say about all this as we get started?
No, yeah, it's being out there in corporate America in the office is something that I think is a different setting to try to navigate, and it's a difficult setting to try to navigate if avoiding processed foods is your goal, or at least mitigating the effects of the processed foods that you do consume. And the only way to mitigate them is to consume less or none of them. So, um, working in person in corporate jobs, corporate facilities for many years, it was very difficult to try to work my recovery in a way that that aligned with my goals.
Right.
So I had to be very, very fastidious about the way that I um, prepared my food and the way that I carried myself at work, because there was processed junk everywhere all the time. There was always someone's birthday, always someone's, celebration. There was always some kind of event going on that people would bring food in for. So for me, it was every time you walked into an office
Mhm.
or break room, there was the food.
And as you're saying that, I'm thinking also you're like, ooh, and it's free. But is it?
I don't look at it that way. But yes, I'm sure some people do. Uh,
Yeah, free
yeah, but
food.
yeah, like you said, it's
Woohoo.
not really. It's a punishment, not a reward.
Yeah. So let's start with why workplace food situations are so difficult. For one, food in the workplace often comes with emotional and social pressures. You don't want to be that one guy who skips a slice of cake at a coworker's birthday celebration or declines the free bagel during a team meeting. Then there's the stress. For many of us, work can be a stressful environment, and ultra processed foods are marketed as, I'm doing air quotes, comfort food. So it's no coincidence that you might find yourself reaching for a cookie after a tough meeting or grabbing chips when deadlines pile up. And let's not forget availability. If ultra processed foods are the easiest and most accessible options, they're going to be the hardest to resist, especially when you're hungry or haven't had time to plan ahead. Any of that sound familiar to you?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that again, it's knowing that you're going to be out in the world is one thing, but knowing that you're going to be in an office setting, in a work setting, or if your work's not in an office, your work could be, in any kind of facility. But if you're in that place and you're exposed to stress, you're exposed to, any kind of an emotional event, right? Which can happen, especially if you're in the industry that I'm in healthcare. There's emotional events every day, every hour, minute to minute. So people will tend to reach for those foods, thinking that they're comfort, right? And they're anything but.
Yeah, I for those of you that don't know, my background is in nursing and my years spent working in the hospital setting were among the worst.
Yeah.
Doctors and nurses are notoriously making quick and easy food decisions to keep on the go. I mean, there are sometimes you didn't get lunch till, 8 hours into your shift. And
That's
our
right.
nurses lounge was filled with processed food, not to mention the pharmaceutical reps would bring in, I'm doing air quotes again, food, very unhealthy habits with the grab and go lifestyle. And I remember, I might have shared this story before about Wichita back in the 90s. A tornado hit really bad. We're getting that, we get them every year, but really bad in the 90s and wiped out a significant portion of the section where I live. Now, all personnel were called in to start triaging patients. I got there about 9 a.m. and had to work all night till the morning. And as again, air quotes, a reward and to keep us going, management brought in all kinds of food for us, pizza and donuts, that type of thing. But the irony was this only added to the
That's right.
fatigue. I understand it was well-meaning. I appreciated those efforts, but the effect of that high sugar with the high sugar spike and then a dramatic drop always follows. So that burst of energy is followed by that slump and that high fat food that all sticks around longer, but it requires more energy drawn into the digestive system to break down that food, or in simpler terms, it requires our digestive system to work harder, which leaves less energy for the rest of your systems, even the brain. So that reduced oxygen level in the brain invites that dreaded groggy feeling. Where your face just feels heavy, your eyelids literally
Yes.
feel heavy. I hate that. So
Yes.
I also hear about teachers, office workers, and restaurant or bar workers having to fight that constant battle of temptation. Jamie, you're a social person and you're around a lot of people. Do you hear other people complaining
Oh,
about
yeah. Yeah.
workplace?
And again, I spent many years in the corporate setting, cubicle land and going to and from corporate offices, or in my case, the last 4 years that I spent out in corporate America, it was in healthcare. So a little bit different. I was in our corporate offices, which were certainly filled with junk, um, and all kinds of adrenaline producing foods. But then I would go into the hospitals, right? So you're in a hospital setting, you're connecting with the employees there, and you're dealing with all of the break room foods and the parties and
Yeah,
the nursing station and nursing break rooms that would be filled with junk, especially, when the last year of my in-person time was spent, in hospitals during the pandemic. So, you talk about the food that was dropped off at hospitals during that time, just like what you were sharing with the tornado. I mean, restaurants were bringing in food, and they knew what they were doing, right? They were bringing in food, helping the first responders and the frontline workers, which seemed altruistic, but it was also the restaurants trying to promote themselves to stay sort of relevant in a very uncertain time for them. So,
Mhm.
and in doing that, they were promoting this food that we know isn't healthy and doesn't help people at all do their best or perform at their best. And it just really was this really stress-filled, processed food-filled, unhealthy setting for the frontline workers to be in. But I mean, they were literally, dealing with death all around them at that point, and they were being directed right by the CDC at the time and WHO to do certain protocols. They couldn't take a second to think about what to eat and when to eat. So when they got a minute, they would just grab whatever was there, just like
Yeah,
you were saying. So I get it. I do get it. But I think so many of us need to do better when it comes to the the food available to the first responders, food available to the people that are affecting the general public. It needs to be much better thought out than it was during that
yeah,
pandemic and in general.
yeah. I have three of my kids are nurses and they were in that situation. So I know exactly what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah,
So now that we've named the challenge, let's look at some ways to approach it. Number one, plan ahead. One of the biggest defenses is a strong offense. Bring your own nourishing, satisfying meals and snacks to work. Focus on foods that keep you full and stabilize your energy, like fruits, vegetable, whole grains, and healthy fats. So make it easy for yourself. Do yourself a favor and make it easy on yourself and prepare your food the night before, or batch cooking on the weekends is what I like to do.
Mhm. Number two is creating a safe space. So if it's possible, set up your workspace as a food safe zone. So keeping those snacks like nuts or fresh fruit or herbal tea at your desk. For me, I was not at a desk. I had a desk at corporate, but I never was there, mostly because I hated being in cubicle land. It just felt like just a waste of good time that could be used at the site level. So when I was on site at the hospitals, I had a wheelie bag, and I would stack my on top of my wheelie bag. I had my lunch bag, my insulated lunch bag that had like a strap on the back, and I would just smack it down the long pulley handle of my wheelie bag, and I would just go. And I would walk all over those hospitals and in my heels, dragging my bags and doing what I needed to do. So when I think about, how I stayed safe all those years and how I stayed in recovery all those years, especially during the pandemic, it was very simple. Whenever I walked into a hospital and I saw all the sick people around me and the family members of the sick people around me, it was very easy for me to say, I don't ever want to end up in this situation, or I want to make sure that I prolong this kind of situation as long as I can. So I'm going to make sure that I'm taking as good of care of myself as I can. So
Yeah,
it,
you had your body armor on.
well, and
I'm
also I was
sorry,
being reminded.
picturing you wheeling around the
Yeah.
hospital.
Yes. Yes. I was being reminded of it everywhere. And
Oh, right.
in my era of healthcare, the pharmaceutical companies were lobbied, against, right? They had laws against the pharmaceutical companies um, bringing in food for healthcare workers, for nurses, doctors, any of that. That was all
Oh,
quashed by the time that I was in healthcare.
oh.
That went bye-bye, I want to say around 2009, 10, 11, 12. So
Hmm.
I wasn't in hospitals until 2014. It's ironic, right? Because pharmaceutical, they slapped the pharmaceutical companies on their wrists and said, oh, you can't bring food in for nurses or doctors or frontline workers, right? You can't supply them with food because that's essentially trying to buy business, right? They were like, no, 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 you can't do that.
Exactly what they were doing.
And now they just moved at the government level and they just buy all their business directly from the government, which is hilarious that that's what they like basically cut out something that was essentially pretty innocuous, innocuous, and they created a huge issue for the country by allowing big pharma to come into the government.
Hmm.
It's really sad.
Exactly.
Anyway, but so there was not a lot of food supplied, right? Other than COVID, there was not a lot of food supplied at the hospital level by outside companies. It just was not allowed anymore. But there was so much food supplied by administration, by other leaders in that team or of that unit or of that site that would
Hmm.
bring in food or coordinate food for different events. And it was everywhere.
Yeah. Crazy. So another one that we know is helpful is to practice mindfulness when you're confronted with food. Take a moment to pause and check in with yourself. Are you hungry? Are you reacting to stress or boredom? Remind yourself that the urge will pass and focus on the bigger goal you're working towards. We had somebody mention today in our Real Food Recovery group that something that she just heard about is literally speaking it out loud to yourself, and that brings the blood flow back to the frontal lobe. And I'm like, I'm going to be more mindful of that practice. And I tried it today. It really does work when you
Yeah.
say, just talk to yourself out loud. I mean, hopefully there aren't people around, but if you can find a place where you won't look like a lunatic, saying it out loud really is helpful and brings calmness and peace and that blood flow back to the frontal lobe.
Yes. Well said. And number four is set boundaries with kindness. One of my
Mhm.
favorite things to do, especially in that setting. It's okay to say no, right? You don't owe anyone an explanation for prioritizing your recovery. No is a complete sentence.
Mhm.
Another way that I used to get around it very easily all the time, even, and it was a white lie 90% of the time, but it didn't matter because it was protecting myself. I would just say, oh, I just ate, thank you. And that was
Yeah.
it. And I would say it all day long. And sometimes people would hear me say it multiple times. And I did have someone say to me once, so are you always eating? I was like, yeah, I'm always eating. And I just kind of, winked and walked away. But because I didn't need to explain anything. I didn't need to explain why I was saying no, or I didn't need to, share my meal times or process with anyone. It was no one's business why I was saying no. It was just really easy all the time to be able to say, no, no, thank you. I just ate. And that was
Smart.
it. Right.
I
And
love that.
I didn't have to partake. I didn't have to say a word. Nobody asked me anything. Uh, and it wasn't, I did have a period of time where I would say, no, I don't eat that. Right. And that, again, I wasn't saying that to them. I was saying that for me. Right.
Hmm.
I would say, oh, I don't eat that, or I don't want, those foods make me sick. Right. Those were phrases that I used. And again, that was trying to protect me. But what that would do was put a wedge between me and others. And I didn't like feeling like that. I felt like it was, in trying to be true to my own recovery, it felt like I was offending others, and that's not how I wanted to be.
Right.
So I just chose to keep it about me, very quick and simply. I just ate.
And don't say anything that opens up a discussion because
Exactly.
so I like I just ate because then it closes the discussion. There's nothing to talk about. Yeah, this next one is involve your co-workers actually. So sometimes being open about your journey can lead to surprising support. So share your goals with trusted colleagues, and you might find they're willing to skip bringing sweets in or include healthier options in office events. Something else to consider when I am working with people who fight it, I often bring up, is it possible to have a conversation with the powers that be? Some people have nut allergies, and in a sense, we have a flour and sugar allergy, or one might say a sensitivity, because we definitely have a large health reaction if we're exposed. Even if you don't get anywhere, you can plant the seed of awareness and hope for the best moving forward. And if there's any way to slip in the fact that food has a direct impact on our cognitive performance, plus, we don't want poor decisions at lunch or in the break room to derail the rest of the day. Now, Jamie, I don't know if you agree with me about my opinion on talking to the uppers. Maybe you think that's bad advice. You can give your opinion if you think that is not a good idea or an okay idea. I think it's okay, but some people may feel differently about that.
I've tried that, and it never goes well. It never goes well. There's addicts everywhere, and sometimes even the people you
That's a
talk
good
to the
point.
highest level are addicts. So it's not worth it. I just focus on me. I don't try to change anyone or anything around me. It's not. It's a waste. In my experience, it's a waste of time and effort.
Yeah, you definitely have to know your audience. I appreciate you having a different viewpoint to share on that too. So most of us know that processed food is bad, yet we don't always make smart decisions about our diet, in part because we're at our lowest point in both energy and self-control when deciding what to eat at work. So French fries and pizza are a lot more appetizing when you're mentally drained. So if you think back to your most productive work day in the past week, can you remember what you had for breakfast or lunch? We want to see if there's any correlation there. I know for me, if I start out wrong, the rest of the day really falls apart mentally and physically, and it's a huge distraction from productivity. I know I'm upset about my choices, and I'm definitely not my best. Have you found that whenever you start out bad, that on bad footing, that it affects the rest of your day?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It was just a lot of times why, I find, and again, this could be an age thing for me. It wasn't always this way. It could be that I'm rising a little bit later, and I'm working out differently than I had in the past. But it used to be that I could not go past 9 a.m. without a meal. And now I choose to just listen to my hunger, which doesn't really come until around 11 or noon
Mm.
lately. Um, my workouts are different this phase of my life. So I think that probably has something to do with it. But I sleep a little bit extra if needed. And whenever I do that, I find that I'm just sort of feeling good and feeling calm and feeling focused. And for me, the earlier I eat, that focus can be disrupted. So I kind of like having that focus in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
and uninterrupted time in the morning to just go from task to task to task to task.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel very productive. So by the time I sit down at my desk, and I get all my couple of first hours out of the way, um, I'm just noticing like, oh, okay, I am a little hungry. I think it's time to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And then even then I can kind of postpone it if I need to. If I'm scheduled in meetings and can't get out of it, then I will postpone it and eat later. And that's kind
Mm-hmm.
of fun to just be able to listen to my body. Whereas before, for
Huge.
whatever reason, it was like impossible. Like I had to eat no matter what.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm the opposite. That's the first thing I do is
Mhm.
eat because I suffer with hypoglycemia and I know I'm going to exercise in 90 minutes. And so I have to eat 90 minutes before I start working out, or I usually have a reaction. So yeah, I like what you said about trust. You've got to just figure out and trust yourself and listen to your body and go from that. So let's add to the problem that unhealthy lunch options also tend to be cheaper and faster than healthy alternatives, making them all the more alluring in the middle of a busy workday. They feel efficient in a backwards way, ironically saving 10 minutes now, and we end up paying for it with weaker performance the rest of the day. Since we've determined that awareness of processed food isn't the problem, what is the problem? And for most, as we've kind of lightly touched on already, it's an action plan that's missing. That can be our biggest weakness as a society on the whole. Jamie, have you found that to be true? If you haven't had a plan in place, that's the bigger problem than lack of information?
Yep, I think having a plan for sure is crucial, because you can have all of the information, but when you're feeling those physical urges of hunger or even cravings,
Oh, yeah.
those the knowledge goes out the window, right? Physiology trumps
Yeah.
every time.
Yes, I had that happen to me Sunday.
Mhm. And and it happens to me still. Like if I don't have something planned. I was talking to my father-in-law this morning. I the last few weeks, my husband and I have been just running with different things and life, and we've not been eating as much. We've noticed just our appetites are not as big, and who knows what the reasons are. So we've had a lot of the last couple of weeks of our food prep, we've had leftovers. And
Oh,
when you have, for the way we eat a lot of animal products. So if you don't eat them within 5 days, they're not really usually edible. So I've been freezing all of our leftovers at the end of a week, right? So
smart.
let's say by Friday afternoon or Saturday morning, if it's still in the fridge and it was grilled the Sunday before, it goes right in the freezer.
Hmm.
Every morning now, as I'm eating through those frozen leftovers, my husband and I every morning will take out, our meat or whatever we need from the frozen stuff, and I have to pry it or wait a few minutes, leave it setting out for a minute or two and let it kind of start to get the ice crystals off, and I can usually get what I need from it. But it's very, that's another example of planning ahead, and I'm not hungry, I'm not even thinking about food, but I need to do it so that when I am hungry and I am ready,
Ready.
have it literally right there on the counter thawing for me, that I can just grab it, put it in the pan and heat it up.
Agree. Agree. And I want to talk a little bit more about how planning and prepping your food in advance is a huge safety tool in recovery. For me, it's my number one. I believe that before we go to bed at night, you need to have kind of an idea, a plan for the next day. And for me, I plan out the entire week of eating before I go to the grocery store once a week, and I have a solid schedule in mind. I'm way too cheap, like you were talking about, nobody wants to throw out food. I'm way too cheap to buy groceries and have them go to waste. So much of recovery is the work you do preemptively before you step on a booby trap. So basically, we're trying to eliminate that decision fatigue by making all of our eating decisions before we get hungry. You kind of talked about it a little bit. Do you want to share anything more about planning in advance?
No,
How do you do that?
I can't say enough good things about how important that is. And I plan and, again, planning in advance is all about doing uh, something. So again, a successful Monday through Friday starts the Friday before.
Hmm. Yeah,
Saturday, so I should say Sunday through Friday starts the Friday before.
yeah,
Um, and
very comforting.
and I have specific places that my husband and I know are safe places to eat that will eat out a couple of times, 2 meals a week, maybe once a week, and that's it. The rest of the time we're eating our own meals at home that we've cooked. And when we're out, when we're making our list on a Friday and we're out getting everything from the store on Saturday or the farmer's market, which is really for us now more than half of what we buy. 2/3 of our budget is spent at the farmer's market,
Oh, wow.
the grocery store. And I'm very, very grateful to live where I live that I can take advantage of that. Um, so when we do procure everything on Saturday mornings, we try to be mindful of what we're going to need. And then when we lay it all out to cook on Sunday, like I make these, the big sheet pans of everything for him to take out
Mhm.
on the grill. And we have this big, a griddle grill that he can put everything on at once and just, in 45 minutes, start to finish, it's done.
Awesome.
And it's wonderful. And then if we need anything, veggie wise, raw veggies or whatever we need to use during the week, all of those are cut up and prepped and refrigerated while he's out grilling. So all of that's done so that we could, know that we can just grab things from it during the week. It's just so much easier. It's so much easier. And it does decrease my anxiety. I don't really get too much anxiety anymore about it. But I think I probably would if I didn't have stuff prepared.
That's exactly the point I want to bring up again, because for me, if I have my food with me and ready at all times, whether at work or play, I'm so much more calm just knowing I can eat whenever I'm ready. And I like to have several small meals throughout the day because for me, I talked about my hypoglycemia. For eating every 3 hours or so, it helps me control my blood sugar, and which means the biggest factor for me in reducing that food anxiety is knowing I can get to it when I need it, having it prepared and ready. Because if I wait till I'm hungry and there's nothing in there, this is my standard joke that I always say that I'm going to be choosing peanut M&Ms and Diet Coke. But if it's ready to go, I will eat what I have prepared. And I love eating my own food that I make at home. I think it's delicious. And you talked about going out to eat. You're comfortable with that. You've got your system down. But you mainly are going out during the evening hours, right? Versus the daytime. Do you
Yes,
talk about how you
rarely.
stay safe going out?
Rare, because again, I only eat 2 meals. So if, my first meal is usually, late morning, early afternoon. So, and usually that's just a quick something at home that's from our prepared food, or leftovers from the week prior to prepared food. Uh, and then we'll eat out usually Saturday or Sunday or Friday and Sunday, depending. And we have a short list of restaurants that work for us. I have some tons of food sensitivities now. It's for me, um, it's not just about, the addictive qualities of the food. It's really, truly I get physically ill when I eat food that does not agree with my system. So for me, it's very important to have those restaurants, a short list of those restaurants, and I will stick to that list. And sometimes I will have friends that will invite us to a place, and I'll just say I'd love to join you. I'll just get a club soda or a water, and I'll just sit and keep you company. But I don't eat there, and they'll say, oh, it's more important the company you're with than where you eat, and it shouldn't matter where you eat. And for them, I will say when you have some a health issue that the food affects you deeply, it does matter where you eat. It does. It's not just about the people. It's a,
Right.
it is about the food. So if I want to enjoy the people, I will make sure that I've eaten beforehand, or I
Mhm.
have food prepared for when I get home, and I will just go and spend time with the people.
Yeah, brilliant. I agree with you. Totally agree with you. There was a recent study in the British Journal of Health Psychology highlighting the extent to which food affects our day-to-day experience. Within the study, participants reported their food consumption, mood, and behaviors over this period of 13 days. Afterwards, researchers examined the way people's food choices influence their daily experiences. Here was the conclusion. The more fruits and vegetables people consumed, up to 7 portions, the happier, the more engaged, and more creative they tended to be. One reason offered was that because fruits and vegetables contain vital nutrients that foster the production of dopamine, that's that feel good neurotransmitter that plays a key role in the experience of curiosity and motivation and engagement. And it also provides antioxidants. The fruits and vegetables provide antioxidants that minimize bodily inflammation, improve memory, and enhance mood. So the bottom line is, if you're serious about achieving top workplace performance, and most everybody is because people want to get ahead, making intelligent decisions about food is essential. So, Jamie, doesn't it seem like the answer is to making the workplace an easier place to navigate simply comes down to making healthy eating and the easiest option possible, or in other words, just setting yourself up for success? Do you want to talk about pre-planning success and your thoughts around that?
Again, it goes right back to what I was talking about before, just making sure that I don't worry about other people and what they need or don't need, or what they will or won't do. I don't worry about any of that. I just focus on what I need to do and get myself set up for success for that day. And that just means making sure I have my food, and making sure that I have my movement, and making sure that I have my supplements and all the things that I need.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. And as a final thought, you might consider actively working to make a difference in your office culture. In many workplaces, employees openly discuss diet and exercise trends, or HR sends out these nutrition challenges to encourage employees to improve their health. Maybe you can volunteer to be on a committee to help someone out in some way. And also, you can check your insurance to see if your policy covers any type of treatment or support group fees. And maybe you could even suggest starting a group lunch walking program. My daughter, who is a nurse in pediatrics at the hospital, she now makes sure that she walks during her lunch break. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So the more preventative efforts that are made in all areas of our life, the less likely relapse becomes. It may seem difficult at first to be assertive, but just remember your employer is best served by happy, productive employees. And you're just working in the company's best interest by taking
Yeah.
care of and taking care of your employees. If any of our listeners or viewers have workplace tips, please write them in the chat or share them. You can even send them to us at realfoodrecoveryforyou@gmail.com. And really, yeah, in order for us to change others and change the world, we really just need to focus on changing ourselves, and the rest falls into
Great.
place.
I agree. And as we navigate these environments, it's important to remember you're not powerless. While you can't control everything, you can shift your mindset. Workplace food doesn't have to be the enemy. Instead, think of it as an opportunity to practice the skills that you're building in recovery, self-awareness, and the ability to make intentional choices. And if you slip, well, it's okay. Recovery isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Acknowledge what happened without judgment, learn from the experience, and move on.
That's right. That's right. I love that. When again, as we're wrapping up, we want to remind you that recovery is a journey, and the workplace may bring unique challenges, but they also challenges will lead to opportunities, I think. Opportunities for growth and resilience and preparation. Every choice you make that aligns with your goals is a victory, no matter how small. I
Yeah.
could not agree with that more. We've got a couple of listener questions here. Paige, do you want to jump in?
Sure. The first one is I sit at the front and there's always a candy bowl we have in the lobby and it calls my name all stinking day. I've actually heard this one come up a lot with people that I work with. So the listener says, it's miserable. What do I do? Well, we agree that would be very hard. I would not want to sit there with a candy bowl in my face all day either. So here's my thoughts. We protect our eye gate, protect where you look. That's helpful. And if you can set a plant so it blocks your vision, that's even better. Or if possible, to talk to your boss to ask if it could be moved, or this is the one I really love. Ask if it can be filled with something other than candy, like a fun bowl filled with Chinese proverbs, similar to what's found in a fortune cookie. I think that would just be, wouldn't everybody wants to read their fortune? I mean, just as a fun, silly thing. So lastly, apply for a promotion where your desk location will change, whether it be at that office or another workplace. Your life does depend on your recovery. It's that important. I don't think I'm being overly dramatic in that.
No, I agree. And also, for one thing that I'll add to that is
Yeah, please.
for success. Set yourself up
Say,
for,
yeah.
don't
Mhm.
rely on others to create your environment. Set yourself up for success.
Mhm.
So there's a couple questions here that that came through that uh again, I want to, we've talked a lot about, right? You know, if what people do when bringing in break room foods, bringing in event foods, holiday foods, birthday foods for other people, we've talked ad nauseum about that. Again, don't go into an environment that you can't control, expecting to be able to control it. It's that's insanity. So the only thing that you can do is you just need to go into the environment as prepared as possible to navigate that environment. And that means that you have got to take your food with you, or come into that environment completely full of your food that you know is aligned to your recovery goals, and know that that's not an environment that any eating happens in, right? So there's two different ways to do that. But again, that question, I think we've kind of addressed it throughout the entire episode so far. But one of our viewers writes, I have so much anxiety before I walk into the break room because I never know what I'm going to find. So, you know, totally understand. That is human. That's the reality of the workplace environment. But again, um, that's giving your power away and letting others control you in an environment that you were not meant to control, right? This is not your home. They're not they're not going to align to your rules, especially when we know these addictive foods can be, you know, people's downfall all at any, you know, no matter what their title is, so to speak, at work, right?
Right.
You could have a CEO of a company who is as addicted to foods as you know his or her employees are. So again, and they won't understand that or know that, and they'll choose based on their addiction. So it's not up to you to change them. It's not up to you to change that environment. It is simply up to you to protect yourself. So if you are as protected as possible by bringing your own food, by doing your recovery, you know, using your recovery tools, doing the activities that keep you safe and healthy and psychologically centered in your recovery, it should not, you know, any anxiety you feel about that setting, there's probably a reason for it. There's probably something an opportunity that you might have missed before you walked into that setting that you can go back and look at and learn from. So
Mhm.
if you have your own food, if you really are steeped in your recovery tools and have sort of centered yourself for the day, um, it could be an opportunity to say, okay, I've done everything I need to do. I can't control this environment. This environment is not mine. And if you do have a triggering work event or some kind of stressful event at work, totally get it. That's also very common. Just know that you avoid the break room during those times. You just don't go in there.
Yeah.
Nobody is holding a gun on your back and forcing you into a break room. Like
Mm.
you can simply walk past it. I've done
I'm
it
sorry.
thousands of times.
Jamie, you guys have to know listening, she's got this dry humor that catches me off guard and I can't keep a straight face. Half the time she's so funny. because I picture these things that she's saying. But the one thing I'll say about anxiety is it's a clue, it's feedback. So instead of ignoring it, just address it, give it a conversation, talk to it, and say, what's really bothering me here? And just keep asking questions till you back it up to till you find out what the real problem is, and then you're able to address it. But yeah, don't ignore it, just welcome it and thank it for the messaging that it's trying to send. So yeah, this was good. This was good because so many people fight this workplace. It's a tough deal. So
Mhm.
we understand and we appreciate you listening. And seriously, if you do have workplace tips, please send them in to us and we'll share it with others. But most of all, thanks for being here. Thanks, Jamie. And if you want to know more about us, you can find us at realfoodrecovery4u.com. That's the number 4 and the letter U, and we hope to see you next time. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Take care.